Welcome to DroneLaw.Pro Radio. www.DroneLaw.Pro is the leading source of information on Section 333 exemptions. Get flying for business today. Today we are here with Sky Smith from Sky Smith Insurance, and he has got considerable expertise in helping Section 333 exemption holders get insured. And so we want to welcome him to the show today. How are you doing today, Sky?
Pretty good. Thank you, Enrico.
Good. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your background in aviation insurance, and then we can kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what Section 333 exemption holders need to be thinking about in terms of getting insured.
Okay. Well, basically, I was a modeler, airplanes, radio control line, helicopters, married into an airplane family when I was getting my license, sold airplanes, and got into aviation insurance in 1985. And I've been doing aviation insurance exclusively till September 11th. Then we added on collector cars and some other stuff to kind of supplement. It's still my business, 90% aviation insurance, all the major companies, and I do business in 48 states. A few, I've even got an account in Hawaii, and we send some airplanes over to Australia. So we've dabbled in a little bit of everything. Most of my business is, probably half of it's experimental airplanes, and almost all of it's personally owned airplanes. Which then one of my customers called me with a need for drone insurance because he was being the pilot on a drone that was going to be used for a photo group. And that started me into the drone insurance. And I went back to all my underwriters, and the majority of the underwriters have a department that was in the drone market, and they'd been in it for the last couple of years. They just weren't real heavy into the general market as it's progressed. I mean, it's exponentially grown, so that's really made a difference. They were involved in drones years ago when it's been with Boeing and some of the big organizations. So this is all kind of new for them. So we jumped in with both feet. I'm going to be at the Interdrone. I've done I do seminars at Sun and Fun in Oshkosh, at air shows doing airplane stuff. Did my first ones on drone and insurance there. So kind of just getting wet and trying to help people get what they need to do a business on it.
Yeah, and so we have a lot of Section 333 customers who are looking to get into the business, and of course, very quickly they get beyond the, okay, I need to get my exemption, into the reality of, okay, now I have to operate a business. And the exemption can actually be a market barrier against those who are playing on the edges, who are flying unsafely, who don't have the exemption, and who don't have insurance. Because if I'm a customer, if I'm a real estate broker and I'm going to hire you to come do the videography and photography for my real estate company, if I'm smart, I'm asking you about insurance. So tell us a little bit. I take it at this point you've already said that there is drone insurance available to the Section 333 exemption holders. What kind of insurance should they be looking for, and what is that going to cover?
Well, really the first thing you probably think about is you need some sort of a liability insurance, property damage, bodily injury. That's your biggest expense, is if you do damage to something. And a lot of the drone people said, well, I don't really think what's my drone going to do? It can't really hurt anybody. I'm not going to hit anybody. Its risk is low. But the liability pulls in. Say you're doing a photo shoot next to the highway and you create a crash, you now become liable for that accident on the interstate. And people don't think about that side of it. There's a lot more than just my drone. There's the surrounding area. So we always tell people in aviation, buy some sort of liability. That's the key. That's the deep pockets. Standard policy is $1 million policy, so that would cover property damage and bodily injury. That's usually the minimum you'd want to buy, and it does separate you out from the average person who's not using it. I mean, I called my homeowners and said, hey, if I'm flying a drone, is my homeowners covered? And they said, well, as long as you're operating as a model, on the modeling, we could cover the liability up to the limits on your policy. So if I had a $300,000 homeowner's policy, I'd have $300,000. But the minute I start acting as a professional, and it becomes no coverage on it. And the same thing, we have farmers that are doing the same thing. They want to go out and they want to search their farms for their crops. And the minute they start using that as an advantage to their business, then the FAA starts looking as a commercial operation.
Sure.
So we try to tell people, really, liability is the least you want to buy, and it's the most important factor on it. If you're a Section 333, it separates you out because most companies don't want to hire you if you don't have insurance. So it makes it very difficult. I think, to get a job. If they understand liability on their business, they don't want to take on your responsibility. And once you buy the insurance, most of them will ask you to name them as additional insured on it even. They'll want some other language to protect them if you're working for them. So it's going to become a requirement if you're a 333. There is, you don't have to be a 333 to buy the insurance.
Sure.
You can buy it without that for the liability. There's one company that does liability only, but they kind of open it up, say it's up to you to maintain the legal status of it and follow the FAA guidelines. Are you flying as a model? Are you flying it as commercial? Are you using it personal? It's up to you on it. But chances are you're not going to pay the money to buy the insurance if you aren't going to use it as some sort of commercial aspect.
Sure. And so another question that we're getting from our 333 clients is okay, if I just go out and buy a standard general comprehensive liability policy, will my drone activities be covered under that policy? Do I need a rider? Do I need special insurance? What should we be thinking about, Sky, in terms of just general liability insurance?
Typically, your general liability insurance likes to exclude anything that's to do with aviation. So once you mention drone or you mention airplanes or anything like that, they all exclude it. So you have to ask specifically when you buy your policy if they will cover operations from an unmanned unit or aviation aspects of any kind. There are a few right now with the agriculture industry. There's a few companies that will cover the liability under their agricultural policy. They've already started to include that. So it's important to ask your current carrier if they're covered. That's like I did. I called my homeowner and said, okay, will you do it? The American Family, this company owns my office insurance. Call them up. Will you cover it? No, not if you're using it for commercial use. So it's the specifics on it. General liability is good, but it might cover if you have set up your tables and you've got stuff and people walking around. That might cover you at that operation. But once the drone is flying,
right,
chances are it won't cover any action from the drone itself.
Right.
So that would be kind of, you got to watch the differentiation between that of comprehensive, like the slip and fall idea. Well, they trip over stuff I've set up in the field. That's one thing compared to my actual drone flying.
Right. And so the reality here is, again, is if you're a smart business owner and you're looking to start up in the commercial drone use space and you've got your 333 exemption, get legal, fly safe, fly compliant with the 333, get insurance, and then when you go market to these customers, you're going to have a huge advantage over the wannabes and the pretenders out there who are also competing against you. And that's what we're telling people. I assume you're telling your customers the same thing.
Exactly. I think that's really important because it does separate you out from the average operator. And I think to make it a business, it makes you look a professional if you do all those steps. And there's a lot of people out flying drones that shouldn't be doing them as commercial use, and they're trying to fill in. They haven't taken the time or they don't want to spend the money. And it happens in every industry, but if you set yourself aside as a specialist that you're going to be a professional in it, that's one of the things is insurance. And it helps, I think, sell your product.
Sure. Sky, what if I want to get my airframe insured? Because I think we all know that there's flyaways and there's a lot of potential for pilot error, and some of these drones that are certainly pretty pricey. I mean, there's some economical drones in the market, but I'll tell you, most of our Section 333 customers either have an Inspire or are looking to buy an Inspire. And so those are more expensive models. And so tell us what our customers should be thinking about in terms of protecting the airframe.
Hull insurance is available. It varies about 7.5% to 8% rate approximately, up to maybe 10, 12, depending on the unit. So the more expensive the unit, the better it is to put coverage on it. And it's really pretty reasonable coverage. It is something that if you had a $1,000 unit, it's probably not worth putting the coverage on it. Sure, $1,000 at 7.5%. You're not going to spend enough money on it, and then your deductible is going to be probably 5%.
Sure.
So you're really not going to have a lot of coverage on it. But if you have a high-priced unit, $20,000, $30,000, it's well worth it. They'll protect it if it's damaged, if it loses control, if you lost signal. I sent a note to an underwriter and said, okay, what if we sink it in a lake? I'm flying over boats and we sink it. And they said, yeah, well, chances are if it's really deep, we won't get it, but yeah, it'll be covered. And then there's a big conversation that, there was the videos of the guy with the fishing line that caught the one at the pier. And so we asked him, well, what if that pulled it down? When you cover it? He said, well, malicious activity falls under the war category. So if somebody well, my neighbor, somebody said, well, what if I just
Yeah.
shoot it down? And I said, well, okay, don't do that for one thing. But if you do, that falls under what they call the war category, a malicious act against the unit. It should be covered if you have war on it. So most things are covered. There are companies that offer it's kind of like an agreed value policy. So if we say it's worth $25,000, if you have a total loss, they'll pay you $25,000 minus your deductible.
Right.
Some policies say, or we'll replace it. And that's kind of the case. If you had a $1,500 unit at the time, like a Phantom of some sort, a DJI that's maybe $1,500 unit, and you lose it, the insurance company has the option to go out to eBay, buy you another one, and ship it to you, and you get a brand new one, and then they paid $600 for it.
Right.
So you have to kind of watch the values, but vitally important if you get a bigger unit, especially when you get in the cameras. You know, when you're talking the camera and the gimbal mount assemblies, those things are almost more money than the unit itself.
Right.
So when you're talking that extra equipment, those things are typically scheduled on that. So you have the drone itself, the UAV, and then you have the camera equipment, and then you've got any of the other stuff that goes along. And that can all be packaged in the price of the insurance.
Great. So Sky, you know, what is your coverage as an insurance agent broker that are helping drone operators get the right insurance? Do you cover one state or all 50 states? I mean, who can contact you?
48 states, and so anything contiguous U.S. usually. Can't do Canada. Alaska is very difficult without being Alaska. Hawaii's tough, but the U.S. pretty much cover anybody, and the companies we work with will cover in every state too. So that's not a problem. Yeah, the only difference is there's an application to fill out. They want to know your background. They kind of want you to be, some of them will ask if you're a pilot. Some of them will ask if you have UAV hours, because really what they're looking for more is what kind of experience you have flying a UAV. And your rate's going to be subject to what kind of experience you have. If you had a recent loss on an insurance claim, they really don't want to take you on, so you want to have a clean record when you come into them. Happens. I mean, we had one the other day, and they ended up, we could only get them liability only because they had a loss before last year. So there's options there, but it's pretty much the same kind of coverages for anybody. Rates vary from state to state, whatever's filed. But if you're in New York or you're in California, you could call and say, I need coverage, and we can get you the same kind of stuff.
Great. Sky, this has been incredibly helpful. How does someone contact you?
They can go to our website at skysmith.com, and there's a place there that actually says you need a UAV or a drone quote. Click here, and there's an application to fill out. Or they can call me on my 800 number or email me. I carry my phone and email everywhere I go. We're a small business. We've been at it for a long time, and we're pretty specialized. We do toys. I mean, I even have to, my homeowners, I have to call my agent because I don't even do my own homeowners insurance.
Right.
So it's pretty limited as to what I cover. And there you saw my dog walking in the background. We bring my dog to work. We're pretty personal service. You call the phone, and I'm the one who answers it, or my son. So it's get a hold of us. 800-743-1439 is our 800 number. Sky at skysmith.com is my email, and just send me a note, and we'll answer any questions we can. I do seminars around the country, and one of those reasons is for educating people. For a few years, I taught high school, and I believe education and being prepared and knowledgeable before you get in is way better than jumping in. You know, a lot of people say, well, you can ask for forgiveness later. I think you got to be prepared in this case.
Yeah.
Being on the legal side of it is being prepared, have your contracts, don't do it from the hip, do everything, set it up as a business, and it makes it a lot easier down the road, and I think it's a lot better for you. And it makes you more professional for your customers. I think the customers that see you come out, and you've got contracts, you've got insurance, and you're prepared is a lot better than just pulling out of the trunk of your car and say, here, I'm here,
Exactly. And we're going to see this market mature, and we're going to see customers get educated, and they're going to start demanding more, and you want to be on the front end rather than the back end of this market as it comes down the pipe. Well, Sky, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. We will see you at InnerDrone. I'll find you, and we will certainly be sending some 333 exemption clients your way.
You bet. And have any questions you ever have, send me a note. I'll be happy to answer them.
All right. Thanks, Sky.
Thank you very much.
This has been Enrico Schaefer for DroneLaw.Pro Radio. And I got to say, this is one of my favorite interviews I've done so far because this is a very common question. How do I get drone insurance? Thanks, Sky. Have a great day, everybody.